just came up with another bright idea.
Today I have Daryl Mosier, who's Manager of Business Development for Donor Perfect. We have Marie McNamara, a client from Aurora Foundation. She's Program Coordinator from them. And then I have Aurora is one of my favorite clients, and Goodspeed is one of my favorite clients. We have Donna Lynn Hilton, producer for the Goodspeed. Hi, Donna. We have Nancy Altschuler, Director of Development. Hi, Nancy. It's been a while. And Dan McMahon, Director of Marketing and Public Relations from the Goodspeed. And I can see that you are all in separate places safely. So let me start with Daryl. And Daryl, I'd like you to tell us a bit about the experience of a virtual event from both a sponsor perspective, as well as a software provider that is useful in virtual events.
Great. Thank you so much, Sandra, for this opportunity. And while originally, I guess I was deciding on whether there was one client that we could focus on, with Donor Perfect, we actually have 10,000 nonprofits that are all trying to do this right now. And the words that Sandra was sharing and the competition that you face right now is very, very real. So I decided to give you some data points from a handful of clients that have actually turned on the virtual event and found some amazing surprises. So let me just share my screen.
Okay.
All right, I trust that's coming through okay?
It is, good.
All right, great. And so as Sandra introduced me, I'm the Business Development Manager. My job really is to try and find the great partner products that work well with Donor Perfect. But I also serve on the board of a human services organization that we'll talk just a little bit about. The first one that I'm going to touch on, and I did hear you say, Sandra, to not use the word auction in your advertisement. Interestingly enough, the Akron Symphony, and I really wanted to pick on this one because the arts and humanities are one of the most difficult and the hardest hit right now during COVID. And what they did is they had a gala in 2019, a one-night gala, and they needed to pivot. And so instead of actually doing it as a virtual gala on one night, they turned it into a week-long auction. And they were actually using the Ready Set Auction product, and they would continue to keep on social to try and promote more bidders to come into the play. They worked extensively with their sponsors, offering them packages and lots of digital exposure, future tickets to events when the symphony would open back up. They also had to collect auction items from their board and local businesses. They didn't relent. They followed up with phone calls, and they also have the ability to add some no-risk big ticket items. Make sure that you look for travel. I know we don't think of it right now, but that's going to be a welcome relief when things begin to open back up again. Their fundraising actually exceeded their goals. They used multiple channels: admission tickets, straight donations, the auction itself, a virtual cattle raise. And they were able to just sort of jump ahead. And that was, case story number one, using the Ready Set Auction product. I had the opportunity yesterday to speak with the folks at Breckenridge Outdoor Education Center. Again, not necessarily an organization that would have been on the front lines of COVID that experiences some great growth right now in fundraising. They had 4 events that they normally do throughout the year. 2 of them had to be canceled. So they decided to pivot and take the one that was canceled and add it as a virtual auction versus a live auction. They ended up holding this after a live golf scramble. Now, golf can still be socially distanced to a certain extent, and it may depend on your communities, but the 2 events truly were separated in terms of how they ran them, because the auction itself was virtual. They ended up experiencing a 15% year-over-year growth in just the auction part of it. And the comments that came back from the donors was that the bid item images were inviting. They were actually able to focus on them and explore, and their checkout was seamless. So the process that the donor experienced was really, really good. The other thing, and this also coincides with what Sandra had mentioned, is that the reach was greater. When it's virtual, you don't have to drive anywhere. The transit aspect doesn't come into play. So they were able to pull in people that they normally would not have. And that was actually the quote from their development director. Next one I'm going to touch on is a virtual walk bike. This particular product and campaign was done by one of our business partners, QGive. And there's a few things that they did really well. And this organization is amazing because they actually held 3 distinct virtual, and I'm going to call them campaigns. Because as you noticed with the Akron Symphony, the event now has different time limits. It doesn't have to be from 5 to 9 in the evening. it can be a week long. And I think that a virtual event can be used for anything that has maybe a start and an end time or a start and an end goal. This virtual walk bike was held on a single day. It was a September 5th common day. They could choose to ride whenever they wanted. They would get sponsors to support the riders and walkers. They ended up raising 37 on their goal of 40, but this one had more of a finite end date. They wanted everybody to be in by September 5th. And I don't think anybody would say that this was not a success in terms of what they ended up fundraising at 94%. It was still a very good program that they offered. The next thing that they did was a virtual campaign, resonating with a target of $50,000. It was a Good Samaritan campaign. It was for funding that was going to help the neighborhood out. And they ended up 117%. But this is one of those, again, that it wasn't a single day. It had a targeted audience, it had a targeted goal, and then they closed the campaign. And then the last one that they did, I just thought this was a creative use of, let's call it a virtual food drive, taking something else virtual. They had logistical difficulties having people drop off food. So instead of doing that, you could actually buy cans of fruit by making your donation, buy a full cart of groceries. And this campaign actually ended up raising $355,000. So again, another twist in terms of what you can do virtually these days. The last one that I'm going to touch on was another virtual campaign. It was a 2-month event, again, very targeted. This was the nonprofit at which I serve, and they ended up targeting the shortfall for the year, which I felt was very important when the board had this discussion. We had limitations in funding. We also had increased the demand because we had 3 times the number of people that were using the food pantry in our community. And we needed to get that message across that this is what we're going to need to survive, to be able to provide for the community. We ended up with 818 new donors and a 400% increase in fundraising in the month of April, as well as we didn't have to do the food donations virtually. They ended up bringing in 83,000 pounds of food. So these are all hopefully inspirational experiences that anybody that's on this call could maybe think about ways that their organization might be able to do a virtual event / campaign.
This is great. I mean, these are examples of really good modifications, right? This morning we were talking about a client. We're helping them with their, we're doing their event in December. And I said to them, look, we're not looking to exchange what you're doing, right? We're looking to expand and enhance on what you're doing. And that's why this has sustainability, because these are things that they've modified that could easily stay even in the day that they go back to doing things the way they used to do it, right? So it's not an either or, it's a and now this, which I love. And the other thing I love is the idea of over a week. 20-minute segments work really well over a week. So if you do 30 minutes on Monday for a cocktail hour, 30 minutes on Tuesday for a mission dinner, 30 minutes on Wednesday for a corporate thank you lunch, 30 minutes on, you can really extend everything else around that week. And then the final thing you said, Daryl, that was really interesting is, or that I observed, was the capturing of all this data. Now I'm going to assume that that's in Donor Perfect, right? The software, unless you're using another company's software to do that.
No,
I don't think so. But those data points are really important to the organization as they make plans in a concept design or in a strategy going forward. But I would imagine it's also important to you as a sponsor, right? Have you seen change in your sponsor benefits by doing more virtual? That's going to be my last question for you before we go to the organizations.
Well, it's interesting. When you describe sponsor benefits, and I'm actually going to pull in another example here. So the Donor Perfect conference happened this year. It ended up going virtually. Years prior, we would have invited 400 people, and we had to have sponsors that were, getting some benefit out of it because there was a virtual trade show that was going on and so forth. This year, instead of 400 people, we had 6,000 sign up. We had 2,300 attend, back to your examples of sort of shrinking this. But the benefits that the sponsors ended up seeing, and this is somewhat dependent on the good software, there was a virtual trade show booth that people could walk through and actually chat with the vendors and giving them some opportunities to be exposed, maybe incorporating in some of your fundraising events the idea that the sponsors might even be sizable enough that they have a speaking engagement to do some virtual advertising and so forth out there would really resonate with the sponsorship. I guess the other thing, I'll just take it from the perspective of Donor Perfect itself. Yes, each one of those examples that I provided did channel their information back into Donor Perfect. And we are continuing to analyze that this year, particularly taking a look at is our overall giving. There's almost $8 billion worth of funds that have been donated, recorded inside of the Donor Perfect system right now. We'll be releasing a report on that in terms of how that has changed month to month during this COVID time period. So these organizations were actually able to look at that data, and that's how they were able to glean rapidly as to where their people were coming from, because as a donation comes in, it goes right into your CRM. You can start to pull reports and know geographically and logistically how things are all coming together. So thanks, Sandra, for that opportunity.
You're welcome. And what do we need to do to get this report? Because I'm really interested.
We'll be announcing it. I would strongly suggest just visit the Donor Perfect website, sign up for the newsletters. We'll get you on our mailing list. For Sandra, maybe you can share the people here if they're interested.
Yeah,
I'll make sure
we can. Scott, maybe you could drop the link to the Donor Perfect website in there, and our website, and Goodspeed's website, and Aurora's website too, because we're going to move over to organizations. So first, I want to thank Marie McNamara from Aurora Foundation for coming. We helped them with their luncheon, and the first thing they said to us is, we want a luncheon that hosts 350 people and raises over 100,000, and we don't want to spend more than 30 minutes on screen. And we went, but it worked. It worked really well. And that's when I learned more about seconds in virtual count, using the time before with a loop and education, bumpering between pieces. All of this I had no knowledge of 3 years ago, but now I know. So thank you, Marie. And also, we have the whole production team from Goodspeed here. And I want to thank them for coming, because tonight, Donna and Nancy and Dan, you have something really big happening, huh? You want to tell us about it?
I'm muted. You think you would get good at this by now?
That's okay.
The mute on mute thing. So we had to cancel our in-person gala, which normally happens in June. And it's normally a formal sit-down dinner with a very special performance that only the people at the gala can see. Normally we have about 300 people who come. We raise between $150,000 and $200,000 normally. And of course we couldn't do it. And we've been talking about how to replicate that in some COVID safe way. And we have our very first gala, virtual gala tonight, called Shaking the Blues Away, a virtual gala concert for Goodspeed Musicals. And as of right now, we have 1,100 people registered. So if we do the 35%, like I'm listening to your 35% number, and I'm thinking, okay, so
where would you have hosted 1,100 people? Nowhere.
I know.
Nowhere.
I know. And we are very close to the $150,000 goal, very close already before the concert has started. And we've used the gala, again, we can get into this more, but we've used the gala in a number of ways, not only to keep in touch with our donors and our patrons and provide them with some content. Our gala, our concert, as Donna Lynn can talk more about, the concert itself is her baby and her brainchild. Is going to be different, we think, than most other content out there right now. So it's a way for us to provide a performance situation in the Opera House for our folks, because we've been able to give them nothing this year in terms of performance. But we've also been leveraging it and using it to raise money, not only through a challenge grant that we received, a $1 challenge grant, but also to incentivize members. We're in our membership renewal campaign right now to renew quickly, renew before the gala and give you a free ticket. So we're using it and leveraging it in a number of ways. And the numbers keep climbing. Like every 5 minutes I look and we're like, we're at 1134 right now. And I'm expecting to be 1200 before this conference is
We
over.
dreamed of 1,000 and blew that away.
I have a question actually for our good friends here. So some point in the future, we'll be able to have people back into our performance spaces.
Don't do it.
What? We will.
I'm telling them, don't do it.
No, well, here's my question.
Not yet.
You think that you could do a hybrid where some people pay a premium to come see it live, but since you have the experience of broadcasting it, you could also have people come in at a less rate to see it that way as well?
Yeah. I think we could. We've never created anything like what we're going to broadcast tonight and for the next week. And I've been frankly, blown away by what our team could pivot and do. I'm so sick of that word pivot, but we've been doing a lot of it. And we've produced a short film within the Opera House, completely on brand. It is exactly what our audience tuning in and anybody who knows anything about Goodspeed is going to anticipate from us, I think. And so Philip, my brain has already gone that way. It's like, okay, well, you almost get to how are we going to top this? Because I want to be able to offer this to our audience when some sense of normalcy returns and we get back in a room for a traditional gala. Absolutely.
I just want to make one quick comment and then hear from the others, is that the power of the internet and Zoom provides a very low cost of entry to broadcast. It's not like you got to buy time on a TV station. You can't compete with, let's say, Netflix in terms of their ability to market, but then again, you don't have to. You're going to your customers and expanding reach that can go other places besides Connecticut, for instance, who can otherwise travel and build on your reputation. You're actually becoming content producers, streamers. That's the fascinating thing about this whole, the irony of the COVID crisis is that what we're going to learn we can do that we didn't think we would do otherwise, because now we've had to do it. So,
and we have definitely had a technology journey with all of our content, because we're not only just doing the gala. Donna Lynn hosts on Tuesdays and Thursdays every other week. She hosts conversations and look backs at some of the things that we've done on our main stage, and then looking forward with some of our new works. And that's not on Zoom anymore. We had it on Zoom, and then we moved it off of Zoom into StreamYard into something else. And what's happening tonight is not on Zoom. It's not on StreamYard. It's on our CRM, which is Patron Manager, but it's highly produced. So it is not inexpensive. I mean, I will say that.
No.
This particular...
You're not saving money when you do virtual,
No.
Well,
No.
not when
Not in this case.
Not in this case, because we
Right.
expected it to be the quality that our audience expects from Goodspeed.
Yeah.
I will say, having done this one time, I've learned where we can cut the corners. If this is successful, we're talking about doing something similar around a holiday theme. And I know already what we don't have to do next time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we had
Yeah.
seed money. So that's how that made this possible. But you're not always going to have that. And you're not always going to want to give your tickets away like we did, because we were using this as part of a membership campaign.
I've been really impressed by the variety of and the avenues that you're using. Instagram, Facebook. Are you on TikTok? I mean, you're using everything.
Not on TikTok.
Okay.
You can go.
Yeah.
You can go pose for us, Sandra. You know what? I'll tell you another one of the benefits of COVID is, I mean, it's horrible that we don't have a season happening, but the marketing department has been able to focus on this gala. Usually, it's like we do whatever. It's like kind of an add-on. I mean, not.
Yeah.
Invitations go out, and we can't market it like we would a show. But this time we can, which is making a big difference.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
No, I
go
was
ahead,
just,
Donna.
another really important lesson that we've learned is the TikTok made me think of it. You know, our younger staff members, our junior staff members have really been the key to us being able to put this all together, because in March, when we left the Opera House and our senior management was figuring out, what the next, well, at that point we thought 8 weeks and now 8 months, and Lord knows what we're looking at. But as our senior managers were figuring out what the future was going to look like, our junior staff started saying, here's an idea, we know how to do this. When, quite frankly, the oldsters you're talking to today didn't know how to do it. And
Yes.
it's just been so, another irony of, of the lesson, we learn the lessons out of this is that, the strength of our junior staff has just really shown during this time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I will say that, that as the junior staff has technology wise and ideas wise, just taken this to a level I don't think any of the three of us could have imagined, is that our patrons, as much as we like to think that this new virtual world opens up accessibility for people, our patrons are completely intimidated by this technology and they don't know how to access it. And we have spent, us oldsters have spent hours on the phone with our patrons in the last week, talking them through how to get a ticket. I mean, it has been hand-holding from the get-go. And our platform actually is pretty simple. It's set up in a very simple, straightforward way. And that has not been our experience. So as much as we like to say it opens up accessibility, there's a whole demographic out there that it closes up the accessibility, and you have to work really hard to get through that.
You do, and it also reveals to me that clear and consistent communication, part of your marketing and communication logic model, needs to include how, and it can't just be a link, because some people don't know what to do with the link. So we use Loom, this little software on our Chrome, and it will literally do a screen recording of anything for me. And so those types of things where you could send a video to someone and they can walk through it, right? This is fascinating. And in defense of other organizations, you're an arts organization, you know how to stage events, right? So let's hear from Marie from Aurora Foundation, who is not an arts organization and just hosted a very, very successful 30-minute event with 325 people, I think, or even more. Marie.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me, Sandra. Yeah, it exceeded expectations. I wish you guys so much luck. I will say those people logging in will be logging in 5 minutes ahead of time, still with questions, even if it's played out. But it's just once they're in, it's great. It really worked well. So yeah, it exceeded our expectations, and we raised more money. We're now close to 118,000. We had hoped for 100, so we're pleasantly surprised.
So when we first started working on building this for you, what was the why? We knew what and we knew how. We brought the how. We could help you with the what, but what was the why, Marie?
So for us, we typically had one, and I only started at the organization a few weeks before COVID hit. So we were right there with you, like learning curve, technology, which platform to use. And it's usually a 500-person in-person lunch at the Marriott with exactly what you said, the whole shebang. Jenny and I, my executive director, felt like it was the one time, and maybe next year too, that we really could be mission driven. So we are a women and girls organization that focuses right now on college completion programs for Greater Hartford area students. We have programs throughout the community colleges that find girls that just need a little nudge. And so they launched their Leadership Journeys, one of the programs. And when we host these in-person events, a lot of times the mission gets lost. People aren't quite sure what Aurora does. They know it's women and girls, but they're not really quite sure what the programs were. So we focused almost all of our videos on their stories, and we had some professionally done, and then we also had them just take their iPhone and tell their story about what program they were in, how it changed their lives. And I will say the feedback we have gotten, I'll start to cry. People were blown away. Even board members who've been members of our board for a very long time had no idea what our programs were doing. They knew our data, we knew, what the mission was, but it really, because we broke it down into seconds, because we were like, only that is the beauty of the virtual event, right? So you can dictate the speaker, you can dictate which pieces of the video get put in, and down to the second. And then we also had Dr. Elsa Nunez from Eastern Connecticut as our keynote, who was phenomenal. I mean, she completely tied the whole thing together. But yes, we were always mission driven. We've got the content and we'll be able to do it better than in person because you're so busy thanking sponsors and the philanthropist of the year and, you know, who did the most on the board. And it was just a really great showing of the work we do. So I know that'll happen to you guys tonight at your event too.
You know, what I really liked about working with you guys is not only that you took direction really well, so that's important, but also that you used the time for all of those thank yous really wisely. So in your loop, you had the thank you list, and in the bumpers, you had the thank yous to sponsors. And so you started strong because you didn't have all of that, you know, 10 minutes of thank you, which really you can lose a lot in that. Really quickly in the last 4 minutes, Marie, what were some obstacles to moving in this direction? Because it wasn't natural or normal for you guys.
Right. And I think a lot of people may have this. There was a little bit of pushback of like, why is anyone going to pay $100 to come to a virtual event? Our typical luncheon is, I think, $125, and you get lunch. It's at the Marriott. You get the networking experience. So we really had to sell the board and our committees of that why. Like, are people actually going to do it? And like you, we had money in it. We had to videotape a lot. We had, you know, overhead. Yes, we didn't have to pay for lunch, but we did have a lot of other expenses. So the pushback was, I don't think this is going to work. No one's going to come. We're zoomed out. Even leading up to it, we were getting that. Nobody wants to come. And so it really depended. Our key were our table hosts that we kept in place and did the same thing. Like, you can go, you don't have a limit to 10 people at a table anymore. You can have 50 people. And so people were sending the invitation out to a wider amount than just, you know, limited to seats at the Marriott. So that definitely helped. There were some table hosts who had more guests than they would have ever gotten in person. And there were some that did have Zoom fatigue and didn't get them, but it all balanced out. And, you know, that was it, the doubt, I think, was there. But Jenny and I and Sandra, we had the gift of seeing the students' stories. And we were like, don't you worry, this is going to be just great. And we did a mix of some videotaped, and then we would go live and then go back to videotape. So there was that authenticness. And I will say, yeah, so we're also able to take clips that you guys will be able to use of each portion of it, and now use that for marketing throughout the year that we never have, you know, all of that marketing material that we can use. Yeah.
Just one point about Zoom fatigue. People aren't fatigued from the event. They're fatigued from the nature of the event. So your people, your community are going to come because of the purpose, regardless of how long they've been in front of the screen, right? And you just have to really hammer that and focus on that and get your messaging around that. I think that will help. And then the long tail of the Aurora Foundation and the Goodspeed event and the events that Donor Perfect noted, that long tail is so important. Make sure in that long tail, as you're reusing, you're also giving them calls to action, because your fundraising can continue. It doesn't end at the end of that event. So think of it in terms of no boundaries. I love this. I never liked boundaries anyways. So this is perfect. This is perfect. We are at 12:59. I really appreciate all of you on the last minute coming in. It's been so great to have all of this insight. Attendees, we are recording this. We also have some tools that we'll send you. Donor Perfect has some information on virtual events that we'll have to you. I think we dropped a link in the chat here. And then we also have an ebook on virtual events that kind of goes a little bit deeper into what we talked about today. If you need any help whatsoever, feel free to call us. If you have further information, I'm sure the good people on the screen would be happy for you to contact them as well, and we could put you in touch if you don't know them personally. If you don't have anything happening tonight, go to Goodspeed, go to their event, check out Aurora Foundation. There's still time to support them. They do amazing work. And our friends at Donor Perfect, they are just a gem for nonprofits and really a valuable tool. And I appreciate them being here. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
1
you.
o'clock. I told you
Great
we'd be
sharing.
done.
Thank you so much.
See you
It's really
later.
fascinating.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
I just came up with another bright idea. I am so smart, suddenly it just appeared. There's a light above my head, sometimes